Welcome to your overview video for Chapter 17, the late 18th century, Haydn and Mozart. Your learning objectives are number 1, to trace the careers of Haydn and Mozart and the development of their musical idioms. Number 2, to describe the principal genres and forms practiced by Haydn, Mozart, and their contemporaries. And number 3, to name several important works by each of these composers and describe some works by each in their mature styles. The most successful composers of the late 18th century wrote music that pleased a wide range of listeners. Haydn and Mozart synthesized styles to create music that continues to appeal to audiences and performers today. Joseph Haydn, 1732 to 1809, was the most celebrated composer of his day. He was trained in music as a choir boy in Vienna, where, as a young adult, he barely supported himself as a freelance musician. His first steady job was as music director for Count Morzin. In 1761, he entered the service of the Esterházy princes and worked mostly at Esterházy, the country estate built by Prince Nicholas Esterházy, who reigned from 1762 to 1790. Here, Haydn composed operas, sacred vocal works, orchestral pieces, chamber music, and music for marionette plays. He also conducted, trained, and supervised all musicians and maintained instruments. Haydn's 1779 contract allowed him to sell his music, and his publications brought him fame throughout Europe. After Nicholas died in 1790, Haydn received a pension, moved to Vienna, and then worked in London with impresario Johann Peter Salomon during 2 extended stays between 1791 and 1795. Haydn's idiom was created from a synthesis of diverse styles, including galant, empfindsam, and learned counterpoint. The earliest symphonies were typically in 3 movements. During the late 1760s, Haydn established a 4-movement pattern: a fast sonata form movement, often with slow introduction, a slow movement, a minuet and trio, and a fast finale, usually in sonata or rondo form. In the first movement, Haydn created contrasts between stable themes and unstable transitions to help listeners follow the form. Each thematic area in the exposition contains a variety of ideas. In the development, Haydn used various techniques to manipulate motives from the exposition. Haydn sometimes disguised or played down the appearance of the recapitulation, which repeats all themes in the tonic, sometimes altered, and often intensifies the transition. In the second movement, Haydn usually offered song-like themes and simple forms to contrast with the drama and complexity of the first movement. The minuet and trio provides relaxation, since it is shorter than the second, written in a more popular style, and in a form that is easy to follow. The final movement, usually a sonata form, rondo or sonato rondo, closes the symphony with a further buildup of tension, climax, and release. Haydn mastered the symphony early on, but his approach changed over time. The deeply emotional and agitated character of some of his symphonies from 1768 to 1772, particularly those in minor keys, has been associated with the literary movement known as Sturm und Drang, which means storm and stress. Beginning around 1773, Haydn turned from minor keys and passionate accents to a more cheerful style, influenced by his comic operas. In the 1780s, Haydn increasingly composed for the public, combining popular and learned styles in symphonies, scored for strings, flute, and pairs of oboes, bassoons, and horns. The 12 London symphonies have more daring harmonic movements, intensified rhythmic drive, more memorable themes, and expanded orchestra. He also used appealing features to please both music lovers and experts. Haydn was the first great master of the string quartet, a genre originally intended for amateurs, and the evolution of these works parallels that of the symphonies. Haydn's first 10 quartets resembled divertimentos and were so titled. With the quartets of Opus 9, 17, and 20, Haydn established the same four-movement pattern as in the symphony, but he often placed the minuet before the slow movement and applied a unique approach to sonata form movements. The 6 Opus 33 quartets of 1781 are light-hearted, witty, and tuneful, with fast or metrical jesting minuets titled scherzo. The humor in these works is aimed at the performers. Haydn's later quartets reveal a shift of the quartet genre toward performance in concerts. In these works, he expanded his harmonic palette, foreshadowing romantic harmony. Haydn's reputation rests primarily on his symphonies and quartets, but these are only a small fraction of his total output. Keyboard sonatas and trios were written for amateurs to play in private, and they usually feature 3 movements in fast, slow, fast format. Haydn considered his vocal works to be his most successful. His many Italian operas, most of them comic, were popular in their day but are now rarely performed. Haydn's most important works for church were 6 masses from 1796 to 1802 that blend traditional elements with a new prominence for orchestra and elements drawn from symphonic style and forms. While in England, Haydn heard some of Handel's oratorios. His own late oratorios, The Creation, 1798, and The Seasons, 1801, show Handel's influence, became standards for choral societies, and feature depictions in music. Born in Salzburg, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, 1756 to 1791, was a celebrated child prodigy. His father, Leopold Mozart, 1719 to 1787, a violinist, composer, and author, devoted himself to educating Wolfgang and his sister Nannerl in music and other subjects. From 1762 to 1773, the Mozarts toured across Europe, performing, composing, and improvising for famous and influential people. The young Mozart became familiar with every kind of music written or heard in Western Europe, and his work became a synthesis of national styles. In Paris, he was influenced by music of Johann Schobert around 1735 to 1767, which simulated orchestral effects on the harpsichord. In London, Mozart met Johann Christian Bach, whose use of thematic contrasts and infusion of features from Italian opera into instrumental works became hallmarks of Mozart's styles. In trips to Italy between 1769 and 1773, Mozart studied counterpoint and composed his first 2 opera serias. In Vienna in 1773, he became acquainted with current styles in the serenade, string quartet, and symphony. Mozart's adult career illustrates the growing tension between steady employment and freelancing at a time when most musicians had to combine the two to survive financially. Mozart was dissatisfied with his position in Salzburg, but he was unable to find another in his travels. He experienced independence and success in Munich with the production of his opera Idomeneo in 1781. For 10 years, Mozart earned his living as a freelance musician in Vienna by composing, teaching, performing, organizing concerts, and publishing. Near the end of his life, Mozart was actively freelancing, but he was not good at managing his expenses and requested assistance from friends. A master in every medium, Mozart is considered one of the foremost composers in the Western tradition. His most famous works came from his time in Vienna and show a synthesis of form and content of the gallant and learned styles. Mozart's music was enriched by influences from 3 of the century's greatest composers, Haydn, whom he knew personally, and J.S. Bach and Handel, whose music he discovered through Baron Gottfried van Swieten. Mozart was a prolific composer of piano and chamber music. For piano, he wrote sonatas, fantasias, variations, rondos, and duets for his pupils for domestic music making and for publication. The first movement of Mozart's piano sonata in F major, Kochel 332, exemplifies his style at the beginning of his Vienna period. Mozart's themes tend to be song-like, perhaps reflecting Italian influence. Composers of the time used diverse styles, referred to as topics, to delineate form, convey feelings, and provide variety, and Mozart's skill in doing so was unparalleled. Mozart's 6 Haydn quartets, dedicated to Haydn, show a mature capacity to absorb the essence of Haydn's technique of pervasive thematic development with substantial equality between the 4 instruments. Many of Mozart's other chamber works are also classics, including his string quintets and works for solo wind and strings. Mozart composed serenades and divertimentos for entertainment, but he treated them as serious music. His most familiar serenade is Eine kleine Nachtmusik. In compositions for orchestra, Mozart is best known for his symphonies and piano concertos. Mozart's early symphonies were mostly in 3 movements and were intended to open concerts or theatrical events, and his later symphonies were in 4 movements. His 6 Vienna symphonies have ambitious dimensions, greater demands on performers, harmonic and contrapuntal complexity, and climatic final movements. Each of these symphonies has a special character. As in Haydn's late symphonies, the finales of Mozart's late symphonies balance their serious opening movement, as heard in his Jupiter Symphony. He composed 17 piano concertos for his own public performance and intended them to please the entire range of listeners. The first movements lend elements of ritornello and sonata form procedures, but they also contain several individual features. The slow movement resembles a lyrical aria, and the finale is typically a rondo or sonato rondo on themes with a popular character. Mozart always maintained a balance of musical interest between the orchestral and solo portions in his concertos. Mozart also excelled in vocal music, particularly opera. He wrote 6 operas before moving to Vienna, but established his fame in Vienna with the Singspiel Die Entführung aus dem Serail, 1782. For his last 3 Italian comic operas, The Marriage of Figaro, 1786, Don Giovanni, 1787, and Così fan tutte, 1790, Mozart collaborated with Lorenzo da Ponte, 1749 to 1838. Mozart and da Ponte were the first to create an opera about Don Juan that took the character seriously. Don Giovanni mixes the style of opera seria and comic opera to develop 3 levels of characters: the noble class from opera seria styles, the lower class from opera buffa styles, and the class or character, like Don Giovanni, who passes easily between the 2 levels. Reference to familiar styles and departures from their conventions are crucial to Mozart's depiction of characters and their feelings. Die Zauberflöte, The Magic Flute, 1791, a Singspiel, contains many 18th century musical styles and traditions, as well as references to the teachings and ceremonies of Freemasonry. Mozart's masses are written in the modern symphonic operatic style, alternating chorus and soloists. Mozart's Requiem was unfinished at his death and was completed by his student and collaborator Franz Xaver Süssmayr, 1766 to 1803. For your 26-point quiz, I would know about Joseph Haydn. I would know about Esterhazy and the orchestra that he had there. I would know about Haydn's symphonies. And I would know about symphony forms and sonata forms. Know about Haydn's contract. Know about the evolution of Haydn's symphonies. Know about Haydn's string quartets. Know about Haydn's piano sonatas. Know about oratorios of Haydn. Know about Mozart and his early life. Know about his life in Vienna. Know about concert halls and their evolution. Know about Vienna. Know about Mozart's symphonies. Know about piano concertos. And know about Mozart operas. Good luck.